Hey there, I'm Sam, and with zero experience in game development, I'm building an MMO. It requires no downloads and runs straight out of the browser. Oh, and I'm writing it from scratch in vanilla JavaScript. As a matter of fact, right now you can go to birthright.dev, from the login window, click on this button here, and get forwarded to my Discord server, where you can request a free access key. Honestly, the only reason I even require login keys at all is to combat the bot armies of the internet. Otherwise, I'd lower the access requirements even further. But wait, let's back up a bit. Why am I even doing this? There's three key reasons. The first one is that I'm tired of what the modern industry has done to my favorite genre. World of Warcraft went from being the adamantium standard to what can only be described as a bad joke.
This was really the turning point for World of Warcraft and what turned many people off of that game. Blizzard reported that 14% of users had canceled their subscriptions, a loss of 13 million players.
Destiny went from producing the best raid of all time to having more microtransactions than a mobile game. MapleStory went from the most social game I've personally experienced to being handled by people that believe that lawsuit payouts are just another company expenditure. Lost Ark, Black Desert, Anthem, Genshin Impact, Fallout 76, the list of games destroyed by greed goes on and on and on and on and on. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of watching world-class game developers create works of art only to have some Machiavellian sycophantic shareholders decide that we need 20 million % profit margins, otherwise we need to downsize the people who made the amazing game in the first place. Then there's the honest games whose gameplay I just don't enjoy. Namely RuneScape, Sea of Thieves, Project Zomboid. These games seem objectively good to me, but they just don't provide the combat and RPG elements that I'm looking for. There are a couple of games that tick almost all the right boxes for me, the rarest of these boxes being high quality PvP. And these are Destiny and Dragon Nest. Sadly, these games still suffer from hiding all meaningful progression behind dozens of hours of mind-numbing grind, artificially increasing playtime by making you kill the same 3 monsters on repeat for all eternity. Honestly, at this point I've half a mind to name Crosscode as the best MMO of all time, but I don't think society's ready for that conversation yet. So what's the solution to all this then? Obviously me, one random dude with zero experience in game dev, will swoop in and save the world. Yeah, no, that's not what I'm proposing at all. Honestly, I just want to make a game that's fun for me. And if only 100 people ever play it, then that's fine. I just want to make a game whose content is decided by the people who actually play the damn game. The truth is, I've been filling a rather large notebook with all my ideas for what I consider to be the perfect MMO for a long time. All the mechanics, the story, the combat, I can see it clear as day when I close my eyes. And that's why at the beginning of this year I decided to get to work. I want to be very clear about this. My goal is not to become a general game dev that makes games. My goal is to make this game and this game alone because I want to play it. I planned the development around 9 key mechanics that could be developed independently, and so I plan to release 9 tech demos, each of which will hopefully be finished in 2 months or less. This video going out means that the first tech demo is finally done. Each tech demo will be named after the game that most inspired the core mechanic being implemented, and to curb expectations and avoid the pitfalls of promising too much too early, I'm looking at you, Ashes of Creation, I will only reveal the goals for the current tech demo that I'm working on, keeping all others secret until I reach them. For example, this very first tech demo has the code name Club Penguin, since my only real goal is setting up an online map where any amount of players can come in and chat with each other. If you ask me, the backbone of any good MMO is the social aspect. That's why I decided to do this first. The second reason is that I'm tired of my job and want a 180-degree change. I'm a career academic that spent the better part of a decade swimming in theoretical chemistry, only to realize that the entire system is corrupt to the core and owned by people who will simultaneously take credit for your work and blame you for their mistakes while requiring you to bleed yourself dry 16 hours a day in exchange for a couple of pennies and the promise of eventual prestige. Not to mention that any form of critical thinking is instantly perceived as betrayal to the cult. The third reason is that I found this girl who made a video on Stardew Valley's economy and instantly fell in love, so I cooked up a plan to get her attention. The third reason is that I have a lot of unused skills in my skill tree. Sure, I do science, but I also play the violin and the guitar. I also love to edit videos, and as I'm sure you've noticed by now, I love video games. If someone will appoint me to another job that allows me to use music theory, fluid dynamics, meme video edits, and game design all in one place, then by all means, let me know and I'll go do that instead. So why did I decide to build it in web? Easy. Out-of-the-box multiplayer support, no downloads needed, and being operating system agnostic. Don't get me wrong, Steam is great, but you still have to download 80GB games. Most multiplayer is limited to like 4 or 8 players, and most of the time you either get shoehorned into Windows, the worst operating system of all time, or you have to sink like an extra 3,000 hours to making your game compatible with multiple operating systems. Building my game in web almost makes these problems feel like a fever dream. My dogma is that web browsers are the ultimate game engines. Miss me with that Unity or Godot or whatever, I'll build my own thing, thanks. And as far as why I chose vanilla JavaScript, well, first of all, I don't just dislike web frameworks, I despise them. As a matter of fact, I've decided to name my game engine the Scope Engine, which stands for Simple Canvas Operations purposefully excluding React. And if you're asking me where the R is, well, I excluded it. That's the point. And if you're asking why I didn't use TypeScript, it's just because I didn't feel like learning it. Okay, so how did I build this game? Well, on January 2nd, I spun up a Docker container, put an Express server on it, and wrote some Canvas code for the very first time in my life. I made a rectangle that I could move around with arrows. I called myself a genius when I did it, and then I expertly forgot about the project for about 7 days. Sorry I don't have that iteration of the game to show you here today, but yeah, no, that code was lost to time. You should be able to ask ChatGPT to make you something similar though, and you should have it up and running within like a couple minutes at most. Anyway, on the 9th, the voices in my head wouldn't shut up about the game, so I decided to ramp it up a little. I picked up an Ubuntu VPS from DigitalOcean, I wrote a fat Docker Compose, I picked up some free sprites and a free background from itch.io, and eureka, the literal best game in the world was born. Look at this, I can move left, down, right, and up. Yep, you heard that right, I'm just that good. Let's talk architecture. I set up Cloudflare's free tier to sit in front of my Porkbun bot domain, which points to my VPS's public IP. Hey there, adding this in post. Not sure what happened to me here, probably because I recorded that at like 2 AM, but that's just plain old wrong. Porkbun is a domain registrar. Cloudflare is the one that actually points to the server's IP. Just wanted to clear that up. A bunch of firewall and other security magic stuff happens, and then all the permitted connections are funneled through my reverse proxy Nginx container. This guy then forwards connections to either the auth server, which actually didn't exist in this version of the game yet, or the game server. The game server then establishes a WebSocket connection with the authenticated client, and after what feels like a stupid amount of work, I can finally move my PNG on the site with arrow keys. But wait, we forgot about the front end. When the page loads, the game client object is instanced, whose purpose is basically just to instance all the other objects and provide an easy communication path between all of them. First up on the list of objects, we have the network manager. It's responsible mainly for establishing the WebSocket, exchanging game state through this WebSocket, and requesting static assets from the backend. The asset manager then pre-processes and caches static assets so they can be requested efficiently directly from the render loop on each frame. The scene tree is responsible for dynamically updating the order in which things will be rendered, which is necessary because Canvas doesn't actually intrinsically have z-indexing. Instead, we just kind of need to draw stuff on the screen in the correct order. And then the render manager simply pulls the current tree state from the scene tree every single frame and renders it in that order. Next, my window manager handles my window objects, which in this version of the game are not very impressive, but as we'll see soon, they act as the backbone of all my UI components. And I also have a camera object, which basically just defines the dimensions and the position of what we see on screen, ensuring that it stays locked onto the player as they move. And finally, I have my state management files. Now, my state management is a mess. This was the first real blunder I made. You see, my coding experience is overwhelmingly in backend, and since I've built like 2 front ends in my life, I kind of did a stupid thing. My logic at the time was, I want a state management that is quick to set up, it provides a subscription system out of the box, and is widely known and has plenty of support. And so I fell back on the only thing that I had any real experience with, Redux. I've since realized that this library was really only meant to be used with React apps, and someday soon I'm gonna have to drop like 10 to 20 hours of work refactoring my entire client and server state management systems to a custom solution. But for now, I'm just doing the smart thing and I'm pretending that I don't see the problem. By the way, if you want to see the newest live version of my code, you can literally just pop into the sources here and peruse at will. My client code is basically open source, so all you front-end demons head over there and then come back and comment how bad my code is. This is only version 3 of the game and I have to make it to version 25 before the video ends. I'm regretting this YouTube channel already. Jumping ahead to version 5, I added an input manager which shockingly manages inputs. I also enabled client-to-client propagation for multiplayer, messed around with a free tile set to make my first map, and added some basic debugging tools like printing the cursor's position, showing a buggy grid, showing player positions, and added a zooming functionality. The teleporting bug you see when zooming is because at the time I was updating player state asynchronously from the render loop, so there was a small disconnect. I fixed this somewhere around version 20, I think, maybe? This background field was supposed to move me from map to map, but eventually I decided to remove it, so its real purpose is just being an eyesore for like 10 to 15 versions. Finally, I got to work on the foundations of my level editor. It made my window objects much more flexible to fit my needs. I added components like sliders and buttons, and added a way to visualize my house assets. I want to make a shout out here to the absolutely amazing Sunnyside World asset pack, which made this first tech demo about 1,000,000 times easier for me. Daniel Diggle, if you ever see this, thank you, bro. Oh yeah, I also introduced a basic collision system where I draw lines that the player can't walk through. In version 6, I refined the editor, letting me place houses and also loading up default map layouts from the server. Toggling the editor will toggle in-editor stuff. Well, server configs are permanent and immutable. Version 7 saw the introduction of my animation system. Without going into too much detail, the way that it works is that my animation manager pulls the sprite sheets it needs through the asset manager and parses them accordingly. Then, when another file requests an animation by name, the animation manager starts up the animation internally and then feeds only whichever frame the animation is on when the request is made. The reason we do this is because this request is done directly from the rendered loop, which means the number of requests per second will depend on the monitor's frame rate. Which, in simple terms, what this means is that if I just let my rendered loop play one animation frame per, frame, then what would end up happening is that people with 120 Hz monitors would see their character running twice as fast as people with 60 Hz monitors. My animation manager solves this problem. Wow, that was crazy. Mysteriously jumping ahead to version 12 because I'm tired of editing this video already, and we see the first version of my chat box, as well as working action animations. The blinking happens because at this point I was processing each frame lazily. Basically what that means is that you were loading in only exactly the frames that you needed. I did fix that later though, don't worry. And we can also appreciate the foundations of the larger, more detailed map that was to come later. Oh yeah, and by this point I'd already rolled my custom auth server with a stunning plain white layout. By version 15, a couple of friends had lent me a helping hand with the assets, so I was able to focus on improving the UI aesthetics, enhancing the chat, adding chat bubbles, and honestly, a whole bunch of other stuff. Notably, this was around the time that I was testing my first version of a layered map. I introduced the concept of background and foreground. This primitive prototype was really bad though. It was inefficient and it was limited to 3 layers at most. It was static rather than dynamic. No bueno, no bueno. At this point, I want to make a shout out to the other amazing asset packs I grabbed from itch.io. Most of my UI came from the Sproutlands UI pack, and the playable characters came from this guy named Scary. If these resources weren't available, my first demo would have probably taken like twice as long. Honestly, I can't thank artists enough for all the work that you guys do. Jumping to version 18, the game's starting to look a lot nicer already. The foundations to the map have been laid, the camera now stops moving when reaching the edge of the map, although we have a bug over there on the left still, don't worry about that. Most of the UI windows have been fleshed out in appearance at this point, and the login window looks nicer too. Oh, and look, the teleporting bug when zooming is gone. Yay! At this point I was mostly fixing minor bugs, rewriting the old systems that were inefficient, and doing lots of multiplayer tests with my friends. Pop quiz! Am I gonna take the time to explain versions 19 through 24? No! Would you look at the time, we're already at version 25. When you load the game in and you see the character selection screen, you want to wait until the characters start moving before clicking anything, since I haven't actually added a loading screen and I probably won't anytime soon. Anyway, we now have female and male character selection, there's animations on the map, I even added emotes to the number keys. Admittedly, these emotes are kind of buggy, but this is just a placeholder system that'll get, replaced before the next tech demo, so I don't really care, to be honest. I also added these nice buttons over here for settings, character selection, and even patching it. Oh no. Moving on, what's this here? Wow, look at this, it's a donation link connected to my Stripe account. Wow. If you walk around the map, you'll find that most of the layering is really bad. Like here, I'm behind this tree when obviously I should be in front of it. The truth is, I did design a really robust and flexible layering system that allows for n layers, but it takes time to handcraft the map to be perfect. And since all this art is going to get replaced anyway within the next couple of months, I really only took the time to flesh out the layers in one section of the map as a proof of concept. See, look, here I can sit between these two houses, and here I can sit between this house and this tree. The layering works. And ain't no way I'm doing that for the whole tent map. And finally, this is what my login screen looks like now. I originally wanted to make a live version of the map sit in the background, but that was going to be way too much work, so then I tried writing some GLSL for the first time. And I quickly found out that writing shaders is no joke, so I just ran back to my regular old PNG background. And that's really about it. This marks a stopping point for my Tech Demo 1, where I met and honestly exceeded all my original goals. The only things left to do at this point were to make a Discord server and edit this video, which may not sound like a lot, but it did actually add like 3 or 4 days of work, unfortunately. Believe it or not, this video only represents about 5% of the total development process of this tech demo. I was originally aiming for around 20%, but I'd like to get back to developing the game, and if I'm being honest, editing is slave work. So if you want to know any specifics, just pop into the Discord server and I'll be more than happy to elucidate. And if you want to support me, then of course donations are great, but even just being active in the community or playtesting, although, there's not a lot to playtest yet, would go a long way.
では、明日も頼んだぞ。